The McDonnell F2H Banshee was the only jet-powered fighter deployed by the United States Navy and the United States Marine Corps during the Korean War. This single-seat carrier-based aircraft, named after the mythical Irish creature, performed exceedingly well, especially in high altitudes, and was highly customizable, with several variants adapting to different kinds of missions. However, the powerful jet soon found its worst enemy in the MiG-15, a faster, more lethal fighter. And even though it was one of the few projects that weren't cut after World War II ended, it needed to achieve more if it wanted to stay alive. A mirror to the Phantom. The McDonnell Banshee was a multi-mission carrier-based aircraft that could be used as a day and night fighter, as well as for photo reconnaissance. The original idea for the aircraft came as a modification of the F-H Phantom, the first jet-powered aircraft to land on a US-owned aircraft carrier. Initially, the McDonnell engineers intended this new aircraft to share many parts with the Phantom. However, it was soon apparent that this would be impossible to achieve with the requirements for heavier gunnery, greater internal fuel capacity, and other improvements. Thus, McDonnell began developing a separate aircraft with a mix of parts made from scratch and some coming from the Phantom, and by April of 1945, the first mock-up, FX2H1, was ready to move forward to the next steps. Although this project survived the massive budget cuts after World War II, development slowed down significantly, and the first 3 prototypes weren't finished until late 1946. The new model was named F2H Banshee, after McDonnell's tradition to identify the company's jet fighters with supernatural creatures, and it came with larger and more powerful engines, namely a pair of newly developed Westinghouse J-34 turbojets, which doubled the Phantom's total thrust. Still, these powerful engines came with a catch: the need for a larger and thicker wing and an enlarged fuselage to further increase fuel capacity. Unlike previous existing American fighters, which mainly relied on machine gun armament, the Banshee was fitted with a nose-mounted battery of 4 20mm Colt Mk16 automatic cannons. This weaponry gave the Banshee a significant forward punch motion against any and all known enemy aircraft. In addition, the Banshee's cockpit was pressurized for high-altitude missions, electric brakes instead of hydraulic, a heated bulletproof windscreen, and ejection seats, the latter of which were not found in the F-H Phantom. The Banshee made its maiden flight in January of 1947, departing from the McDonnell facility in St. Louis, Missouri. It immediately proved to be the future of U.S. Navy aviation. During its first test flight, the aircraft flew at a climb rate twice as high as that of the Navy's primary defense interceptor, the F-8F Bearcat. The United States Navy was impressed and ordered 56 units in May of 1947. The similarities between the Phantom and the Banshee allowed McDonnell to complete the first operational F2H1 only 3 months after the last Phantom was built. Operational history. The Banshee entered operational service in August of 1948, just in time for the beginning of the Korean War in 1950. During the conflict, the aircraft served with the U.S. Navy's Task Force 77, as well as with the Marine Corps. Although top brass was undoubtedly impressed with the first model, the F2H, the Banshee's second variant was the most widely used version of the aircraft during the war, with significantly improved performance, strengthened wings, and several upgraded features. The F2H2 variant included 200-gallon fuel tanks on the wingtips, and by installing the engines in the wing roots next to the fuselage, the McDonnell engineers significantly reduced aerodynamic drag. One of the variants was even able to carry a single Mark 7 or Mark 8 nuclear bomb if necessary. Banshees were capable of cruising the air on one engine and were relatively stable in operations aboard ships. In 1949, an F2H2 Banshee set an altitude record while flying at 52,000 feet. However, the aircraft had 2 evident adverse traits. The first was its tail section, which was vulnerable to stress loads beyond the gravitational force load limits guided by the manufacturer. The other, a fragile landing gear, impeded carrier-arrested landings while the aircraft was above the recommended touchdown weight. Once the pilot flying the Banshee dumped excess fuel to achieve the permissible weight, he was limited in passes at the deck, an unpleasant and even dangerous situation under adverse conditions. Initially, the F2H2, nicknamed the Banjo by Navy and Marine pilots, was launched from the decks of offshore-stationed American carriers and provided escort for larger bombers, while also providing support to ground forces on tactical strikes. Due to the aircraft's outstanding performance at high altitudes, the Banjo also proved its worth as an escort fighter for the United Nations Command Ground Forces, a multinational military force that supported the Republic of Korea during and after the Korean War. However, the Banshee, like most Navy jets of its time, had straight wings, as the Naval Air Services had resisted swept-wing designs, fearing that they would be too unsafe to operate from carriers. Consequently, the Banshee was almost 100 miles per hour slower than the newest land-based fighters. When the Soviets introduced the Mikoyan-Guryevich MiG-15 in November of 1950, the Banshee's obsolescence was further put into evidence, and it was clear that the American jet-powered aircraft would be easily beaten when facing a Korean-owned MiG-15. Incidentally, These aircraft were secretly piloted by Russian pilots. After that point, and less than a year after its introduction, the Banshee jet operated far from the range of enemy fighters like the MiG-15, and it was slowly relegated to simpler operations close to friendly grounds, leaving the heavy-duty fighting to the North American F-86 Sabre, a jet with state-of-the-art gunnery platforms. Photo Banshee. During the Korean War, photo reconnaissance was vital in support of the interdiction campaign. Due to the aircraft's high-altitude advantage, the Banshee became an icon of the U.S. Marine Corps' photo reconnaissance units. This variant, the F2H-2P, brought increased capability over the F9F-2P Panther, the previous reconnaissance aircraft used by the Marine Corps. The Banshee was in high demand because of its unbeatable battlefield photographic system. It could deliver the same coverage in one pass as other aircraft did in 3 trips. This reduced danger and exposure to enemy fire also reduced the processing work required by photograph laboratories. The Marine Photo Reconnaissance Squadron became so effective using the Banshee that they shot enough exposed film to circle the globe 6 times. One of the Marine captains even went so far as to call the jet, quote, the finest photo plane in service. Its speed, maneuverability, visibility, range, and endurance far exceed any other fighter photo plane in service. At the time, surface-to-air missiles had not yet been introduced, and only a few aircraft had radars, making air defense predominantly visual. Thus, it was almost impossible for ground forces to shoot down a Banshee. Despite their continuous deployment throughout the conflict, only 2 F2H-2P variant models were lost to radar fire, with no air-to-air loss. Canada. In 1951, the Royal Canadian Navy proposed a $40 million deal to acquire 60 brand-new Banshees and replace their Hawker Sea Furies. However, fiscal wrangling and political disagreements fumbled the deal, and the purchase was approved in 1952 after the Banshee production had ended. Fortunately, there were plenty of Banshees to spare, as the U.S. Navy had already retired them. The Canadian Navy then acquired 39 second-hand U.S. Navy Banshees for $25 million, all delivered between 1955 and 1958. With exceptional work and diligence, the Royal Canadian Navy engineers and maintenance workers were able to restore their Banshees into excellent operational condition. And to improve the aircraft's performance as an interceptor, the Canadian Navy equipped their hand-me-down Banshees with AIM-9 Sidewinder missiles. Although initially well-liked by the Canadian pilots for their flying qualities and high-altitude performance, the Banshees began to suffer from several problems. In total, the Canadian Navy lost 30% of its Banshees to accidents. The aircraft was the primary model used in the short-lived Royal Canadian Navy Grey Ghosts, a naval jet air demonstration team. The group's name was a play on words from the Banshee's name and the RNC color scheme. The few remaining Banshees that survived were used in firefighting exercises. Legacy. Although the United Nations had air superiority during the aircraft's early stages, the McDonnell Banshee exceeded expectations throughout 1950. However, when the Soviets unveiled the MiG-15 jet, the Banshee greatly suffered, as the Russian-made aircraft made the American one look like an old-school device, with its straight-winged mount typical of the previous decade. Although there were no Banshee losses due to enemy fighters, the aircraft never scored any air kills either. In time, the Banshee and all its variants were succeeded by more capable aircraft. The Banshee existed in the active U.S. Navy and U.S. Marine Corps inventory until 1959, and reserve units gave up theirs in 1961. The following year, the Royal Canadian Navy formally ended its use around the globe. Thank you for watching our Dark Skies video. Don't forget to subscribe to all our Dark Documentaries channels and hit the like button if you enjoyed this video. Also, let us know in the comments below if you'd like to see a specific aircraft featured on our channel.